all supposed to pay 100 Ghana cedis per ton of emissions every month.
Yeah.
Every month. Then the vehicles, motorcycles and tricycles, are supposed to pay 75 Ghana cedis per year. Motor vehicles, buses and coaches up to 3000 cc engines are supposed to pay 150 Ghana cedis per year. Motor vehicles, buses and coaches above 3000 cc are supposed to pay 300 Ghana cedis per year. And cargo trucks and articulated trucks pay 300 Ghana cedis per year. This is how the tax is to be implemented, and the effective date of implementation being today, the first. Actually, it was supposed to be 1st of January, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
But this was supposed to take effect today.
Today.
And currently, there are those who've checked. They've gone onto the Ghana.gov platform, and the response is that they don't find that there. What I am told is that there's been a lot of discussions here and there, and today there are still meetings. In order to be able to implement this, you're looking at the Ghana.gov platform itself. You're looking at the Driver and Vehicle Licensing Authority, DVLA, and you're also looking at the Ghana Revenue Authority. So while on paper this might look like a very easy thing, it's not been easy implementing it. And so what I am told, and George Riafe actually, in Business News, according to George Riafe's report, I think we can just hear George Riafe's report, because it was going to be very difficult to implement it today. What I'm told is that it may actually, implementation may start at midday. But let's listen to what George Riafe has picked up.
Joy Business is learning that the necessary systems that should be in place to aid the enforcement of this levy is yet to be installed. That is, the monies that the Driver, Vehicle and Licensing Authority, for instance, will collect, how would that be seamlessly transferred to the Ghana Revenue Authority? Another reason why I could see the enforcement of this levy delayed is the fact that the Ghana Revenue Authority is currently in discussions with the various transport unions on how this levy can be enforced. Therefore, this notice is seen as a little bit premature. Joy Business is learning that the Ghana Revenue Authority could be looking at enforcing this levy in the coming weeks, or possibly in March. We understand there is still some work that needs to be done to aid the strict enforcement of this levy that is yet to be completed. Some have already argued that this levy could be likened to the VAT on electricity consumption, which has seen an announcement of it by authorities. However, strict enforcement has delayed.
Yeah, so that seems to be the current state of affairs.
Yes, so that's actually the situation now. But Kojo, you need to ask yourself a few questions. So last 2 years, we started, the world has started a conversation about energy transition. We've talked about going green. Now, Ghana as a country was one of those countries that actually kicked against it.
Yeah.
Now, in the words of President Akufo, and he was very categorical, and we all supported him at the time. One of the things the president said was that the West, as in the developed world, have over the years used fossil fuel to aid their development. Now that African countries were discovering fuel in commercial quantities to aid in the development of these African countries, they have started another conversation aimed at thwarting those efforts. President Akufo, was convinced that that is not the way to go. And so as a country, we were committed to protecting our environment, but we did not, in the immediate future, see ourselves as a country that was going to be embarking on, stopping the usage of petrol or diesel. And I at the time felt it made a lot of sense because, one, you don't actually have, the logistics. And I stated, for instance, that if we were to acquire, according to the Energy Commission report, if were to acquire 50,000 electric cars annually within the next 10 years, for instance, or the next 5 years, what we may need will be in excess of about over 1,000 megawatts, which we currently have and would have to build. And so they say that, I mean, at peak period, if we're charging all 50,000, we're looking at around 350 megawatts. That's at peak period if you're charging all of it. So that will take it about 1,750 megawatts within the next 5 years. And of course, once you decide, to do this also, the thing is that you may want to build additional, capacity. But this is the point. Today, charging ports, so in the West on roads, highways, they've actually provided infrastructure. The question is, in Ghana, where is the infrastructure? I mean, I don't want to mention places, but when I checked outdoor, there are about 2 or 4 of them.
In the whole country?
In Accra. You could be right, in the whole country. At the time I was reading that report. So the question is, why the haste?
So you've really pointed to the lack of policy credibility, if you like, with this whole emissions tax. Because the idea of a tax is, first of all, you are trying to deter a certain activity, a harmful activity. And secondly, you are trying to mitigate the effects of that harmful activity with the money you collect.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you tax alcohol, the idea is that you want people to be less motivated to drink alcohol. But also, you want to raise money so that if people get sick from drinking alcohol, there's money to look after them. Where does this apply with the emissions tax? Do you want to discourage vehicular movement in favor of what?
You want to discourage carbon dioxide.
In favor of what? Are there electric
green.
trains?
We don't have.
Do you have electric cars? You don't. You only have 4 or 5 charging points in the whole of Accra. So you don't have the electric cars in order to tax us into using them. Just a moment, if I could just wrap up on this thought. So first of all, there is no alternative. You are taxing construction. Is there an alternative to construction? So where is the logic behind this policy? Meanwhile, you say you want to fight emissions, but you can't fight Galamsey. You want to fight pollution, but you can't fight Galamsey. Anyway, let's hear from Ben Boakye. He's the Executive Director at the Africa Center for Energy Policy, ACEP, and he joins us on the phone to have a discussion about this. Mr. Boakye, once again, good morning to you, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Kojo. Good morning to the team.
Okay. So, emissions tax, it's supposed to start today. As a policy, is this something helpful?
Yeah, I think it's trendy. People are implementing, tax instruments to be able to curb emissions globally. We have about 27 countries who are already implementing emission taxes. There are some countries where it is really as high as the cost of an electric car. In Beijing, for example. And these are countries that already have infrastructure and systems to be able to help, promote new forms of transportation and commuting. So in those countries, if they tax you, you can have the alternative to move from the conventional fuels to other alternatives. So if you bring Ghana into that picture, the fundamental questions I think you've been asking them, what is the alternative for the Ghanaian? And you will hardly find one. It's not a luxury really to drive in Accra or in Ghana. It's something you have to do because there is no option. You can't move from one point to the other by a train or by a bus, that can comfortably send you to your office. So you have to necessarily drive. So you then clearly see that this is just an opportunity to raise more money to fill the fiscal hole that we have. And this is a tax that actually have questioned us, one of the policy bipolars that you have in our country, where in just a year ago, the same government was telling the Ghanaian people that even if the world stops using oil, we are going to need our oil. So
Yeah.
we're going to still produce our oil and gas and use it. So we're essentially encouraging Ghanaians to continue buying fossil fuel cars. And suddenly, after encouraging people to buy fossil fuel cars, then you've slapped them with a tax. That this is your punishment for listening to us, to keep buying fossil fuel cars. And that is where it becomes important for us to think about how we promote the well-being of the Ghanaian first. All right, and when they are well-to-do, then you can have more room to tax them. But just looking at areas where you think that Ghanaians don't have a choice but to pay and keep taxing it, I think you are rather making Ghanaians poorer. And by that extent, you're also going to essentially lose revenue because you're always pushing the Ghanaian to find creative ways to avoid paying the tax. Right? Because if you take, for a company that is running maybe 50 cars, you think it's just 300 CVs. But if you have a company that is running 50 cars or 60 cars, and they look at the numbers and it hits their dashboard that this is how much we're going to have to pay for that fleet of cars, they're going to have ways or find ways to be able to absorb the impact of this tax. And that, push them to create ways around tax compliance and continue to evade tax. So the net effect really is that you'll be losing revenue somewhere, be thinking you're gaining revenue by implementing these taxes. So that is really it. We know clearly that it's not about carbon. This is not going to prevent anybody from driving. They know you don't have a choice. You will have to pay for it. The carbon will still be generated because the Ghanaian will have to move from one point to the other. So there is no way you're going to save or you can prevent people from polluting. So you're just trying to take advantage of the people and tax them more without a choice. And that is what we have actually been slapped with at this point.
Would it not perhaps be more efficient if government just wants to raise money, if that's all it's about? Should they not perhaps have considered maybe increasing the roadworthy, rate, or implementing some kind of charge that they can take from vehicle owners annually at DVLA, rather than making it a tax and attaching it to emissions?
So let's broaden it. So if you are taxing people, you have to look at particular activity and the taxes around it. So you're only looking at transportation. So moving from one point to the other, how much tax can we put on the Ghanaian, right? So you look at a part of that value chain is the fuel, and the fuel is overtaxed essentially. You look at your litter, and you look at the levies that are on it through the ESLA, through the special petroleum tax, and other levies that have been piled on. It's all just for you to move from one point to the other. You have to pay that fuel. We haven't done anything about that. We're still taxing, the driver for buying fuel, to be able to run their cars. So if you now say that after taking all those taxes, the road fund tax and all of it, you still want to now find ways around the same transportation value chain to tax them. You're not just being sensitive, to the same Ghanaian who is driving and has no option but to drive. Finding ways to tax them at all costs. That really is not being sensitive.
So, the conversation now is about whether government is ready to start implementing this tax from today. Indications are that nothing is really showing up on the Ghana.gov site, which would allow people to start paying it from today. Do you think they have jumped the gun and have attempted to get into this a little too early? Or perhaps could they be reconsidering the whole idea?
Oh, they could do it. If you do it through the DVLA, they'll start with who are registering their cars and be able to immediately activate it through that end. What could be the problem is how do you then account for what is collected immediately if it is not plugged into GRA system directly. But I don't think it's something that would be burdensome unless there is something that we don't know. For example, in instances where some consultants are hiding behind some of these tax collections and you do not know, that's where it becomes challenging. But we will need to push for that information. How do they do it? Who collects it? And what is the cost of collection? We need to have information on all of that to be sure that it's not another scheme that will not generate revenue directly for the state.
Okay, but Ben, let's look at something also because you're a policy analyst. Now, policy-wise, and you've talked about last year as a country saying we were still going to use our fuel, we're still going to exploit it because we felt that it was supposed to aid our development and the West was just being unfair to us. So in less than a year, we've moved from this position to a position where now we're punishing the very thing that we said we were going to do. Does it make sense policy-wise that in less than 1 year, we move from we're going to do this to now a decision to punish the very thing that we said we wanted to do?
Yeah, I think it's essentially it. You see, if you talk about even electrification, right, where countries are encouraging people to buy electric cars. If you have an electric car today in Ghana, it's difficult for you to move from Accra to Kumasi without being worried that you may be stuck on the way. Because there is not a single charging point on that highway that allows you to do that. So the government has not prepared to help anybody in this context. It's just recently that they waived duty on buses, right? But I mean, how many people can buy buses immediately? You're thinking about the average person who is using, fossil fuel car to go to work, to do business and the rest of it. So we haven't really rolled out any policy to help or to provide the alternative. So you clearly see that it is not, an alternative that they are pushing. It's just to raise more money from you, and that is what it is. Like I indicated, if you encourage people to buy fossil fuel cars, what has really caused you to change your mind? Doesn't mean that you didn't think through when you were pushing the policy of continuous fossil fuel consumption just a year back, and suddenly you've changed course. It really shows that it's an opportunity to raise money through these taxes. Is not going to have any impact on carbon emissions because there are no choices in the short to medium term. So they know that once they slap that, more money comes into the budget, and that is what there is essentially.
So let's explore the point that you've made. You say, I mean, if you're using an electric vehicle in this part of the world, you're going to have you would struggle because from Accra to Kumasi, there's no charging port on the way. So can we use electric vehicles in this country now that it's become a problem using fossil fuel vehicles? No. If we decide to use electric vehicles in Ghana, is it as easy as they make it seem?
I think it's possible to use an electric car, and I've said that in the next 10 years, you probably will have only the politicians using electric cars or buying a new electric car because they don't buy fuel. It's cheaper to run. I use an electric car. But the point I'm making is that for people to be incentivized to move to the alternative, you need to put in place the modalities and the necessary basic investments that are required to do that. For example, they had said that they are using this tax to be able to provide electric buses immediately for people. Or they would have set up, a transit system that they're going to use this tax to pay for over time. I mean, if you go to Senegal, they have built an electric train, first-class electric train and they're taxing the people for it. So you can see the train, you can go and sit in it, right, and go to work or move from the city to the new city that they are building. So when they are taxing you for it, you know what you are paying for, right? So the alternative is there for you to use. You don't have that. The government is not even building charge systems. A charge system sometimes, I mean, in this day, it's as cheap as from $2,000 to $10,000. You could have them everywhere. The government hasn't even made a commitment to just put 10 on the way. You see, the commission always thinking we are going to do charging stations, and they've been talking for years. We don't see them rolled out.
How many do we have in the country currently? Outdoor ones. How many do we have?
What we have outdoor in Ghana, I don't even consider them as charging point, because you still have the whole old 1 kilowatt maximum 7.
There's one at ANC Mall.
So that is not a charger. What I have in my home is bigger than what you have at ANC Mall. So those are not the kind of chargers you need. You need fast chargers that can pump energy into your car, like you go to the fuel station to buy petrol or diesel, so that you can quickly move. Within 30 minutes you are charged, or within an hour maximum you are charged. Those are the kind of electric cars, and because they are up from about $5,000 to $10,000, you need some financial muscle to be able to deploy that. And these are things that government agencies and government could put the initial investment in place, where if you had 5 or 10 spots on the highways, then you are comfortable to drive your EV along that line, because you will not get stuck along the way. But those things are not in place, all right? And we just taxing where we know that people don't have the alternative. And even beyond that, if you bring an EV to Accra today, you are taxed like a luxury car, right? So there is no incentive for you to even benefit by going to buy an EV as an average Ghanaian or middle class person. You need to pay. They even struggle to classify the car, at the port. So they tax you like a luxury car, by just trying to buy an EV. So these are all the hassle that people are going through, thinking the alternative. But beyond that, people will still go electric in the short to medium term, because it's cheaper to run, it's getting cheaper to buy even today. There are cars that are as cheap as $5,000 to $6,000 in China right now. I've seen some in Ghana, and they keep coming in. So without that support from government, people are still going to move along the lane. But immediately there isn't that incentive for others, people to get into it.
Well, I want to say a big thank you to you, Ben Boakye, for your time with us, certainly giving us angles to this matter. We appreciate it. Ben Boakye, of course, is Executive Director at the Africa Center for Energy Policy. He joined us via Zoom.
So, Coach, it's obvious that this is something that, it's clearly a revenue generating.
It's a money-grabbing scheme.
Measure. It's not as if we're doing this because we want to protect our environment. Okay? We're not doing it just because we want to protect our environment or anything. It's just that we need money. And I've been having conversations with certain people who know more about the decisioning. Some of the things that went into this decision, and they tell me that, yes, it's a way of making money, and we are watching. And so if we realize that many of you are not, and so now you see a trend which would happen. You'd have inspection of roadworthy certificates the more to find out whether people are indeed paying. Okay, and so for those who actually, went into the registration, or those who had the DV plates already and don't have to renew it, those who have it currently, the 2024 ones, consistently you would have, a lot of people asking you, when are you going to register your car? When you become frustrated, because it's just about making revenue, getting money from the people. But this is it for me. We know in other jurisdictions that talk about going green, going electric, has been there for the past 10, 15 years. They're putting money into ensuring that by 2030, they reach that level. So government can actually assist businesses to build more infrastructure for the changeover. what is it that we have done in this country? For me, is the first question. What have we done? You heard Ben Boakye. What have we done? So, yes, we get up and say, oh, let's go. And that's the end of it. Everything we do, I mean, just haphazard planning and thinking. Let's go. End of story. Let's go. End of story. Today, you've heard the drivers. And you see, sometimes when we say it, oh, I mean, it's just 150 Ghana cedis. Now, the commercial vehicle driver or owner has interpreted that 150 Ghana cedis only. It goes to add up to an increase in insurance and increase in petrol, because he's still using petrol and diesel. So then he says, I need to increase transport fares. And what happens? The ordinary people who use these vehicles have their expenditure going up and they're not earning more.
Well, I mean, this is what you get. I mean, our finance minister is an investment banker. His special skill, his superpower, is taking people's money. That's what he's good at. If all you have is a hammer, everything is a nail. Every problem is a nail.